Hey, everybody, welcome back. Thanks again for joining us. Today, we have a very special guest who actually is normally on the other side of the camera. This is Jeff Davis. So, if you don't know him, he's actually been a part of Everyday Theologian since day one. Thanks so much for helping in so many different ways.
Of course.
But today, Jeff said yes to sitting down and sharing his testimony with us, which I'm very excited about. So thank you, Jeff.
Of course.
Will you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself before we get rolling?
Yes. So my name is Jeff Davis, as you may know. I grew up in California and moved to Texas in 2009. Not necessarily by choice, but I hated it first, and then it turned out to be probably the best thing that's happened to me. So moved here. I've been in Texas ever since 2009. I am currently married. I have one child recent. We have a 1-year-old baby girl. So that's super awesome. And then I do this. I film and edit things and make videos.
What do you do film-wise the most?
Everyday Theologian. Just kidding. I mean, there's a lot of different things. I would say kind of like along the lines of a promotional commercial type video.
Marketing for people.
Marketing videos. Yeah, a lot of interview type videos.
Awesome. So if you're listening, that's what you need. Jeff Davis, Red Cord Productions. Plug. So thank you for telling us about yourself, and we're going to learn some more. If you'll just kind of tell us, we'll kind of start with the foundation of, I know growing up was in California, but then a big portion of your childhood was the transition from California to Texas, or with your parents. Is that kind of?
Yeah, that was definitely a huge portion of my childhood, and kind of affected me throughout most of my teenage years and even young adult life. Yeah, it was a big part of my life. So what had happened, I grew up in California, had a great childhood. My parents were together. I have 3 older brothers. And we just grew up all playing together, skateboarding, riding bikes, being wild, climbing trees. I mean, we had a great childhood. When I was in 5th grade, my parents came to us and got a divorce. And I think that messed all of us up, me and my brothers, although we all just kind of brushed it off. At least I know I did big time. Totally brushed it off. Whatever. They're divorcing. Not a big deal. Never really talked to anyone about it. Just kind of tucked it under the table, and it was that. And it was what it was. I mean, I never tried to open it or make it a thing or anything. So that was a big part of my childhood. After they divorced, maybe 2 or 3 years after that, my dad had moved to Texas. And same thing with that. I kind of brushed it off. I didn't want my dad to go. Like, I love my dad. I loved being with him and hanging out with him. And I really didn't want him to go. And he had asked all of us boys if it was okay. And I know I said, yeah, sure, that's fine. Even though deep down I'm like, no, like, I don't want you to. I can imagine my brothers probably felt similar. Although now it's been the absolute best thing. I mean, thank God he did now, because we're all out here. But anyway, at the time, yeah, it sucked. So he had moved to Texas. And after that, and also, when we were younger and all of us boys and stuff, we did all go to church. My parents took us to church. I mean, we knew who God was, and I've always believed. That's never wavered, even since I was a kid and went through a lot of crazy stuff in my life. I've never really questioned it. Like, I don't think he's real or something, that's never really, I've always believed. And I've always believed in Jesus and what he did on the cross, and what happened there, and his Holy Spirit being resurrected. But so going back, growing up became tough after my dad left.
Okay.
Had no father figure, and we had a stepdad come into the picture kind of right away, who we didn't get along with at all. So it was, kind of this new stepdad guy. I don't like you. My dad's gone. My mom's trying to tell me what to do, but I'm going to do whatever I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I lived my whole high school, middle school, high school life was just me really doing whatever I wanted. And I mean, at the time I skateboarded, I was really big into skateboarding and um, had something going there that probably could have went further, had some sponsors and building a little bit
Wow.
of a name for myself. I was extremely straight edge. Like I didn't drink or smoke or do anything. I just wanted to, that's kind of what I took my anger out on with my parents divorcing and my dad leaving. Skateboarding was a way for me. It was an outlet. Like that was where I could go and express myself and get angry on my board and film tricks and really just let everything out and leave
Mm-hmm.
it there. And I got really good at it. And up until probably 17, I had started to go through a bit more problems in my home life with my mom and my stepdad and my dad and custody issues. And I was the youngest boy, and I know there was some things going on between my parents, and I was kind of getting caught in the middle of it a little bit, and I didn't like that. So like me, I was very good. I say very good. Turned out to be horrible at bottling stuff up, pushing things
Mm-hmm.
down, and running away from them. I was a runner, um, and every problem that kind of came my way, like I like to run from it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so as things escalated between my parents and what was happening with me, because there was some stuff where like I did end up going to Texas for a little bit my junior year, and then I ran back away to California in my senior year and finished off my senior year in California. And I was constantly getting kicked out of my parents' house. So I was 17 at this time. I had started to smoke weed. I had started to drink and go to parties, and I was dipping my fingers in this whole party scene. And I liked it. It was another way for me to find that comfort that I was missing and find there was something in me missing, which is why like I clung so hard onto skateboarding and tried to identify as a skateboarder. And once I started to dabble in this party scene, I was slowly skateboarding a little bit less. And so it's like I was clinging on to this new thing a bit more. And I was clinging hard, And so as things escalated in the home life, the party scene escalated. And throughout all this, I was constantly being kicked out of my mom's house. And then, I had to go to Texas and I got kicked out of my dad's house and
Mm-hmm.
then back to California and my mom kicked me out again. And then I went back to Texas permanently after senior year. I graduated, finished out high school living at a friend's house, and then went to Texas permanently and lived at my dad's house and was there for like a year before I got kicked out again. Granted, I was not making the best choices.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to do me, make Jeff happy, and do things that are pleasing myself temporarily. And so, I mean, of course, they kicked me out. They didn't really know how to deal with me. Like I was wild.
So this is ending high school. You're
Yes.
doing some drugs,
Yes.
illegal drugs. You have been kicked out of your parents' house, going back California, Texas, and now you're in Texas at your dad's, and he tells you that you can't stay there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would you say was this the final event, the final straw that broke the camel's back, or
No.
okay,
No, not quite. So that happened. I mean, then they gave me time to find a place, whatever. So I got kicked out of there, got an apartment with some friends. Stuff escalated more. Started dabbling even into heavier drugs, into pills and heavier things. And this was probably 2011-ish. And so this goes on for a couple years of me just on my own, living in multiple different places, getting kicked out of one friend's house. I find some new friends. We get a place together. Doesn't quite work out there. And I'm constantly from 2011 until 2016, really, was this massive downfall of me trying to find me and having no luck, pretty much. I mean, I just dove headfirst into extremely hard drugs, doing heroin and coke and things in a million years I never thought I would do, which is, I mean, using needles. And never in a million years, every time I did a new drug, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do this. And months later, I'm doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got worse and worse and worse. And it got to the
5 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
It was 5 years of, and 4 of them were probably the hard drugs, the heroin and the coke. And so there was definitely a heavy addiction building up, And throughout those 5 years, I had really just lost everything. Like I had a girlfriend I was with at that time. We were together for those 5 years. And at the end of it, she had left because I couldn't stop,
Mm-hmm.
And I had tried multiple times to stop. I couldn't. Tried checking out some AA classes and some Narcotics Anonymous classes, and I couldn't stop. I was constantly getting in trouble with the police, and um, that was no good. And I stole a lot to feed my addiction. Like every house, and I mean, I just, whatever I could kind of get my hands on to make a couple dollars,
Mm-hmm.
I would take it and sell it so I could get money to keep getting more drugs.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very nasty cycle. And I mean, I ended up getting caught with that, getting caught stealing, and then got a charge for that and going to jail. And that wasn't enough to stop me. I got out of jail and went right back to it, And so it wasn't until um, coming into 2015 and 2016, my parents and my family started to get a sense of what was happening. And there was even times where, I obviously got caught going to jail, and I'd call my parents and tell them what happened. And so being released and coming out of jail, like, I told them exactly what was happening and what
Mm-hmm.
drugs I was doing. And so I did, like, open up with them and let them know where I was at. So they knew what was going on, but and they tried to help me a lot. I mean, I know they're praying for me a ton. Um, and at this point, my parents have their own salvation story, and they went through their own thing at this time. And now they're hardcore Christians and walking firm in the faith and praying for their fallen sons, so it's super cool. But yeah, so at this time, they're trying to get me help, and they're trying to get me into these different programs and different, places, different Christian programs. Because ultimately, I mean, they knew that I needed to get right with God and get in line with his plan for my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that too, but I had no idea what that looked like. I had no idea what steps to take. I didn't want to take the steps, to be honest. I was like, it's hard and it's scary. And
And would you say that you were addicted to these substances at this point? Like, if you wanted to stop, you could not stop.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And if I did stop, I got like extremely sick, and I could only make it like a day or two. And I'm like, I got to get more because I'm just so sick, like the withdrawals are rough.
So what was the final thing that happened to say, like, that you realized, okay, I want to get help?
Yes. So the final straw, there was one night, it was a crazy night, and I went to this, trap house where I was getting my drugs. I didn't even have money, but I let the drug dealers borrow my truck for the night so they could give me some drugs in return. And I hung out at their house all night waiting for my truck to get back. And it was the most uncomfortable, out of place I have ever felt in my life with these, I mean, pretty hardcore dudes up in this house. And I mean, all there's people coming in and out all night, and just being around them. I mean, they're not type of people I wanted to be around. But it hit me hard that night. Like, Jeff, what are you doing with your life? Like, look where you're at right now. I mean, I have no friends. I have nothing. I'm sitting in this trap house. And just have absolutely nothing. Like, my heart was just, I don't even know where my heart was at or where it was or anything. Like, I was so lost. So finally at like 4 a.m., the dude comes back with my truck. I get in my truck, and I didn't have a house at this time. I was kind of just homeless and sleeping in my truck wherever I could go. So I drive over to the hospital in Fort Worth and go into the parking garage, and I'm just trying to sleep a little bit in there, and I can't. And I just break down, just crying. Like, I didn't know what to do. And one little detail I will say before I left while I was at that trap house that night, my dad had called me and said, "Hey, I found this place. It's called Victory Temple. It's a men's home. It's a Christian men's home in Fort Worth. And their main focus is, helping like drug addicts and homeless and people off the street and kind of discipling them into men and women of Christ. And it's free." And I'm like, whoa, like that sounds awesome. Yeah, like I'd love to go there. I don't know if I'm ready yet. So he's like, okay, well, let me know when you're ready. And so, yeah, that was that same night. I get my truck, go to the hospital, blah, blah. I'm crying in the truck, and I'm just so broken. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do today. I don't know where I'm going to go. And this is kind of how every day was. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen that day. And so I just remember breaking down, crying in the car. I even had a little bit of heroin left, and I threw it out my window, and I called my dad, and I was like, "Hey," I couldn't even talk. I mean, I was just crying, just called him, just sobbing. And he just knew, that I was ready. And so he came and picked me up and took me into this home. And
this is in Texas?
Yes, okay. This is in Fort Worth, Texas, north side, Victory Temple. It's pretty sweet. So yeah, he took me to this home, and I had been there before only for a couple weeks, and I wasn't ready to go that first time. Like, I was kind of forced to go, didn't want to be there. I just kind of dipped out the first chance I got that first time. So this is the second time me coming, and I was just so broken. And I knew a couple people in there because I'd been there, 6 months prior, and there were still a lot of guys in there who I had seen those few weeks. So when I first show up, it's nighttime, and I'm just a mess. And, I see some people, some familiar faces come out of the home, and they just come up and just hug me, like, just give me the biggest hug. And I just broke down so hard. And I just remember all these guys just start praying over me, and they're just laying hands on me and just praying for me and just welcoming me back. And they're just so happy to see me back. And I just felt like I didn't deserve to be back, But it was the coolest moment, because I just remember I closed my eyes and I'm just crying and thanking God and just telling God I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm serious. I'm serious this time. And I'm going to do whatever you ask me to do, And I want to be your son. So I think one of the most vivid memories is when they kind of finish praying for me and they take their hands off me and they're just, welcoming me home. And I'm walking into this house. I can't even describe it, but like something changed, in that moment of them praying over me and me praying too. And I'm walking into this house, and then it's like, I literally can't even explain it, but I was seeing differently. Like my eyes were just opened. These guys in this home like all of them were just glowing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just had this glow, this hardcore glow about them that I've never seen ever before. And the only way I can describe it is like it was just the Holy Spirit just all over them, and they're just radiating Jesus, you know. And I'm like, holy cow, like I want that. I want that. This is so awesome. And I just felt so at home. Like I just knew like this is it. Like this is where I'm supposed to be right now. This is it. Like it was the happiest moment of my life.
So you stayed?
I stayed.
Okay.
Longer than 3 weeks. Yeah. Yes. It was awesome. So I was all in this time. Like I knew going through and doing everything I had done these previous 5 years, trying to do things my way, Jeff's way, and just do what Jeff wanted. It wasn't working because I had tried everything, and I had tried everything to stop doing the drugs. I tried everything to change, and I couldn't do it. And so I knew I had to completely just give up my way and my way of thinking and trying to do things my way, and go all in trying to do things his way and what he wanted. And so I did. And I told God, I told myself, like, I'm going all in, man. Whatever I get asked of in this home, whatever happens, whatever, just anything, like whatever I get asked, I'm going to do it. And whatever my, kind of leaders in this house ask me, I'm going to obey, and I'm going to do it, because I had no like obedience at that point in my life. And so that was a huge thing. Being in that home was kind of building this foundation of obedience.
So how long were you there this time? You said you stayed longer.
So I was in this home for about 9 months. And one cool thing I will say too is, like, before I went in here, I tried to stop doing drugs multiple times. And I think the farthest I made it was like 6 or 7 days, just enough to kind of get over the withdrawals, which the withdrawals were really hard. And especially when you're alone, it's really hard. But going into this home, I mean, this is Christian men's home. It's not like there's doctor staff. They don't give you pills to cope with your withdrawals. I mean, it's just, you're cutting it and that's it. But Jesus was there, and there's like multiple people just praying over me. And they have a caretaking room for people who are withdrawing to hang out for, a handful of days and kind of get over the withdrawals. This was the only time like the withdrawal was a breeze. I mean, I didn't even get super sick, and I was doing more drugs than ever before I went in. And there was like no withdrawal phase. Wow. But I just remember, like, throughout the night, I would just feel hands on me, and like I thought it was weird. I'm like not like in a weird way, but like people were praying for me, and I would feel like someone lay their hand on me and just hear these whispers of prayers. And it was incredible. And I'm telling you, like, I didn't really withdraw at all. And it was just the craziest thing to me. I'm like, I have no way to explain it other than God just helping out the situation.
So you're there for 9 months, withdrawing in a good way, building these relationships, growing in your relationship with the Lord. And then what happens after those 9 months?
So yeah, I'm in the home for 9 months, and this was an awesome opportunity where I built this awesome foundation, and it's a very in the streets ministry. So, I mean, after months, I'm out kind of like just witnessing and sharing, what God's done in my life and through this home, with other people. And I just built like a super solid foundation, and we're constantly in 2 or 3 teachings a day. So it's like we're learning a lot and then practicing, what we're learning too. So it was great. I was in there for like 9 months. And I was ready to leave this home, and go, start trying to figure out my path. And so I leave, and the first, month and a half, 2 months, I'm very connected with the church still. Like I moved back in with my dad and stepmom. They let me come back. They're just thrilled, on how how great everything's going. So I'm very connected with the church at first, and within months, I slowly start to, miss a couple Sundays and miss some services and stop opening up my word or my Bible, as much as I was, and just start to get a little more disconnected. And then before I know it, I smoke weed again. And then the next thing, I pick up the hard drugs again. And now I'm fully not going to church because I'm like, if I go, they're going to know. And I don't want to deal with that shame or guilt right now. So I just stopped going and fell right back into the drugs. And it's like in the Bible when it talks about, coming into the presence of God and then kind of like leaving the presence. And now you're like leaving with this clean, swept heart for like 7 times as more evil spirits to come occupy that. That's kind of what it felt to me, because this time after being clean for like a year and really like chasing after the Lord, I went down so much harder than I ever have. I mean, I just went all into drugs, like
So it's worse
bad.
than when you even
It
went
was
before.
worse, and I was doing way more than before. And it just got really bad, and I got to a deeper, more depressive place than I was before.
So how long would you say this time period is?
So this was like a 6 to 7 month time period from when I started. So yeah, around 6 or 7 months of just kind of straight downhill all the way again.
Living with your dad.
They kicked me out.
Okay.
They knew what was happening. And yeah, like I was doing good. I had this awesome job, like saving money, and then just bam, lost it all. Spent all the money, started trying to steal things again to get more money to get drugs, and just fell right back into it, And so I was had another just kind of breaking point one night, just in an awkward place. I was at this crazy house again with just these guys who, I will say, like the owner of the house was homosexual, and I was there with my friend. My friend had lived with them. He was actually a friend from Victory, and he was kind of falling down the same path. So I'm like, I'm going to link up with him so I don't feel as bad. We'll do this together. And, but yeah, I was in this house, and it was just another horrible environment. I mean, drugs going on, these awkward guys. And I'm like, what in the heck am I doing, Jeff? Like, this is not, we got to get out of here. Literally that night, my oldest brother calls me. And he's just like, what's going on with you, man? Like, I know there's stuff going on. And he tells me about this place out in Paris, Texas. One of his really good buddies that he went on this event called Quest with, one of his buddies built this separate house on his 60-acre ranch. And his sole purpose is to help men and women who have been through a program to help transition out of that. But like his main purpose was he wanted to help guys find out what they're passionate about, what's their calling, and how can you chase that down? How can you achieve that? Because I had no idea. And so I'm like, dude, yes, like I need to get the heck out of Fort Worth. I don't want to go back to Victory.
So let me just point out real quick, because I'm hearing this story, and I know you, I'm friends with you and your wife, Selena. But this is my first time really hearing the details.
Yeah.
And it's like the first time that you had the breaking point, you're in a house that's very uncomfortable, and your dad calls and tells you about this home you should go to. And then the second time you're in an uncomfortable house and your brother calls you and tells you about a home you should go to. So it just really sounds like God is working in the whole midst of your story, saying like, here you go, Jeff, take this opportunity. And then I love that God doesn't give up on us, because even you're saying like, here's another opportunity.
Yeah. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because like, and there's plenty more, believe me, like there was a lot of opportunities that my dad and brother had tried to get me to do. And I said, no, but these are the ones that I said yes to. And it just happened to be at the worst of the worst, time in my life.
Yeah. So this is you now living in Fort Worth. and you're about to move to Paris, Texas.
Yes.
Okay.
About to make the big move to Paris.
And have you heard of Paris, Texas?
Never heard of Paris, Texas.
Okay.
I've never heard of this place. And I just knew it was, my brother told me it was a couple hours away. And so I just knew, that that's what God wanted me to do. And like, although I was far off, I mean, I still would try and pray, and I still like had a relationship somewhat. It's not like I completely was just like, I'm done with you or something. I mean, I was just lost. And I just didn't know what direction to turn or where to go. And so, yeah, my brother told me about this place in Paris, and I just knew I had to get away from Fort Worth because I could not get my stuff together in Fort Worth. And I needed a new start. So I was like, yes, like, let's do it. And I think a couple days later, we ended up driving up here. And I was so nervous at first. And I was, still like withdrawing a little bit from drugs. So I still like really nervous. I felt really weird and had a lot of shame kind of setting in and stuff because the drugs are wearing off and reality's starting to hit me. I mean, when you're on like hard drugs, you're just in another world. And it's like reality is getting blocked out. I was blocking it out purposefully, to comfort with these drugs because I didn't want to deal with reality. So it's like now stuff's starting to set in and hit me, and just everything that's happened over the past 6 months starting to hit me, and I'm starting to cry and get emotional. And I just remember pulling up to the ranch and like meeting Chris, the guy who owned it, and Cameron, and his wife, the people who worked there. And, they just like, I've never met these people. I talked with them on the phone a little bit, but like just their smiles, when I get there and I walk up to them and like, they just wrap their arms around me and like, once again, just welcoming me. And I'm just like, start breaking down crying. Like, what the heck, like people welcoming me home and like, where am I, but it was just incredible. Like their hearts, toward me. And so I knew coming to Paris was exactly where God wanted me to be. And I knew coming out of the Victory home, one thing I was missing was like, I still had no plan and I had no direction in life. And yes, I was saved and, on fire for God, but I still had absolutely no direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. Like I was like a little kid, like, what do you want to be when you're older? I don't know. I was still like, in that sense, still just kind of lost. And so coming to Paris, like that was Chris and Cameron's, big thing. Like they wanted to help guys like figure out what are you passionate about? What do you enjoy doing? What do you love doing? What do you want to do? And, so that was so big. And so like right away, I mean, we kind of start diving into that. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do when I'm older. I'm old right now and I don't know. And so I just start thinking back to, like when I was a kid, like what did I love doing? And I loved acting and I loved playing with cameras. And that was kind of the first thing I wanted to do was be an actor and like be in movies. And so I kind of start like exploring that a little bit more. And throughout my whole skateboarding, career, like I loved filming and editing skateboarding. I was always the one making skate videos. So, I end up picking up a camera again out here. And
where are we at time-wise?
So I come to Paris in the end of 2017.
Okay.
And yes. And so within months, and one of their big, the end of 2017, come to Paris. I think it was in like October, November. And then at the beginning of the year. So the first few months are great. And I will say, like at first, I had so much shame built up, so much shame. Like when I first came to the ranch and met Chris and Cameron, I could barely like look at them in the eye because I was so incredibly ashamed of what I had done, all the people I've wronged, and then especially going into the victory and just doing so well for like a year and then falling back in harder than ever and now getting another chance. And I couldn't, I was just so ashamed of everything. I couldn't make eye contact with anyone. Like, it was bad. And so God just kind of started to work on that. And um, in the way he did it, Cameron was a big part of it, because Cameron would say, just help me dig into things and say, okay, well, where do you think this is coming from? Like, yeah, you've got this shame. Like, what do you think first started you using drugs? And he wasn't asking me to answer him. It was more like, I think you should ask this question to God, and, maybe go sit in the woods and listen for an answer. Maybe go just seek after him and listen for an answer. And so he just encouraged me a lot to do that, which in victory, there wasn't time to do that. We were on a schedule 24/7. And so that was something I didn't really get. But yeah, coming to the ranch, there was no schedule. He's on a 60-acre ranch, this huge forest. And it's like, that's all we had to do was go seek and listen. And so I spent a lot of time doing so.
So before, you were trying to fix your drug addiction, but this time you're trying to fix your relationship with the Lord is your main focus. Would you say that was kind of the difference between the two the homes that you stayed at?
Yeah, I would say so. And even like, yeah, I mean, basically that's what was going on. So yeah, this time, like, coming to the ranch, um, and even going to victory, like, yeah, I went there because I had a drug addiction, um, and really realizing drugs were not the issue. It was just a whole sin issue.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just I would do heroin. There was a whole slew of stuff I was doing outside of drugs. I mean, I had a bad, corrupt heart. And so that was like the issue.
Yeah. I love something you pointed out as you were like kind of starting this spiral in your teenage years, was you were always seeking to please yourself. So that is the issue, right?
Yeah.
That God wants to deal with. And
Absolutely.
he can
Like,
add so much to that. But I feel like what you're describing, the second home here in Paris, you were really fixing the sin issue.
yeah, I wanted to dive in and figure out why. Why did I start doing drugs? Why did I go back to them after I was doing so good for a year? And just like, why? I had so many questions. And why did I get kicked out of my parents all the time? And why did this happen? And so I started, asking these questions to God. And not only just asking, but like I would spend a lot of time just listening with no other distractions. Like, I was so thankful to be in a place on this ranch where, like, didn't even have cell phone service. And so it's like, I'd sit in the forest for hours with no distraction and just listen.
So how long were you at this transitional house?
So I was at the ranch for like, I think 2 years.
Okay.
And yeah, the whole time there was just incredible. And I went on, one of their, Chris's, like, I guess, I don't know what you call it. It's rules. I don't want to say rule, but like requirements.
Okay.
And it wasn't even like a firm requirement, but he really wanted people to go on Quest, which was the 5-day.
It's kind of like a men's retreat.
They have like a men's and women's one. You're just spending 5 days just seeking after the heart of God, It's really like freedom type of ministry, I guess. And so that was the big thing for me, was this 5 days on that event. And that's where I got a lot of these answers of why, why I went to this drugs and the effects that, the divorce did have on me. And like, my dad leaving, not to blame anything, but like, I think the enemy used that as a big opportunity to slip in some lies, and especially with me getting kicked out. Like, I just believed that I was just unwanted. Like, my parents didn't want me, And so there was a lie that got slipped in, and I believed it. And so it was so easy for me to self-comfort with like drugs and stuff. And so once this lie got uncovered, And I started really seeking after who I was in Christ. Who does God say I am? What's my identity in Christ? And like I wanted these answers, you know, and I wanted to go deeper in that. And God just started opening all these new things up, all these old hurts and wounds, um, and speaking truth into them, you know, because I had a lot of lies I believed. And so once I was finally in a spot, a quiet place for him to do that, and he had my full attention and I could receive his truth. And then there was also other men in there who, you know, I could talk about that with, and they could pray for me about these things. And, you know, I had the same for them. And it was just an incredible freedom walk, just discovering freedom and like who I truly was and who God's truly calling me to be. And once I understood that and believed it, I mean, it was just like game over almost. I mean, it was just a whole new, literally a whole new me that's like never been discovered. I mean, it was.
So we're at the end of 2017. You moved to Paris and you're here for 2 years in that home.
Yeah.
Learning about who God is, who God says that you are. And then after these 2 years, what happens then?
And so, yeah, I'm here and like, he just completely transforms my heart. And yeah, I was just full. I mean, I was full. It's like best way to describe, in a good way. And so, yeah, I came to Paris just with a broken heart and a backpack full of clothes and had no idea what was going to happen. And then, yeah, a couple years later, I'm at that ranch still, and my heart is fuller than ever. And I mean, I still had a backpack full of clothes, and that's all I had, but I was full. I was happy. I didn't need anything else. Like, that was it. And so, I did get plugged in. I mean, obviously being into this, it's a Christian home. So like there's a church they attended. So like right away when I came out here, like I was involved in church, and we ended up switching churches and going to Impact Church just a few months into living at the ranch. So like, I mean, right away I'm getting involved with church and ministry. And I mean, cause I knew like I gotta be plugged in. I cannot be on my own.
From your last experience, you knew.
And so, yeah, be plugged in and stay in community. And so like, I mean, that was one of the first things I did is like within months getting plugged in and finding some friends, you know, some good people to get myself around. And so I did that, you know, and for a couple of years and just kind of built even more of a stronger foundation and went just deeper in like who I was, and then ended up meeting a girl at church, and which is a whole nother story. But yeah, I'm now married to said girl who we were together for like, I guess a year. And then after being at that home for a little over 2 years, I moved out. I mean, I saved up and moved out, got my own little place. I had a car at that time. I had a job. I knew what I wanted to do. Like God gave me direction and really showed me like what I was truly passionate about, which was, you know, filming and working with cameras and that whole side of thing. Like I love it. And so he kind of gave me the opportunity to do that again. And so, yeah, like fast forward, I mean, I'm married. We had a baby, which was incredible. Like, and it's just so awesome because God knows, like, he knows our hearts. And that's something I've always wanted, was to be married and have a family. And
you don't just work with cameras now, you own a business.
Yes. And so, yeah, now I have like my own little company, you know, and I'm working for myself, and he's just definitely taken care of me through the crap and the good, you know.
So how many years are you sober now?
It's been
since the end of 2017?
Yeah.
Okay.
I get, like 5.
Yeah.
I don't know. How long is that? 5 years?
Yeah, you're making me do public math, but
I
yeah.
know. Well, I don't do math
yeah,
either.
like
So
5.5 years. So
that is so crazy to me to think it's already been that long. Like, that's just mind blowing.
And yeah, it's incredible to, you know, for Colby and I, my husband and I, to know you now. We didn't know you before, but just to hear your story, it's like you would think, what, Jeff? You know? But thank you so much for sharing all of that. I truly believe that your testimony is a story of God's grace and love.
Absolutely.
And just like the endless opportunities that the Father gives us. And even to say, like, you know, somebody may be listening and have struggled with drug addiction or any addiction and may not be at the place you are now of full recovery, a new life. What would you say to that person?
Which one? The recovering or the person who knows the recovering?
The person who hears your story and wishes they were there, but are not quite there yet.
Yeah. I would say enjoy where you're at, like, because if there's one thing like I have learned, it's wishing I was already there. And then by the time I get there, I'm like, crap, I wish I was back here. And not saying like back in the midst of the drug addiction, but like there's times I think about being back at the ranch and just in this, I had everything I needed there, which was like nothing but God. And I just quiet, peace. I mean, no stress.
So you're saying,
and so I'm saying enjoy where you're at. And if you're in the midst of your drug and you want to get out, then there's a way out. But you have to be, the thing is, the way out doesn't look how you think it's going to look. It doesn't look how you want it to look. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I just always had this picture, like I could go to a local place and get cleaned up in 2 weeks and come back out and get a job and I'm going to be great.
It's a process.
It's a big process and it's not going to look how you want it to look usually. And so I would say trust it, you know, trust the process, go through it. And if you want something different, like you got to do something different, you know, you can't do the same thing and expect something different. So, trust the process and trust God, especially like just, run with him. I mean, he's gonna provide.
It's even, I'm even thinking about your story about some of the places that you say that you've been. No matter where you've been, God can and will still use you.
Oh yeah.
You know, like looking at your life now, it's like, what, you were where?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny too, because like I have friends now, like I'm still friends with, you know, some people who I skated with back in the day. And you know, just the other day, one of my buddies was talking about, he's like, man, I just remember you would always like we'd go to a skate spot and you're like playing Christian music and stuff. And we always thought it was like the weirdest thing. And he's talking about a time where I was like in the midst of like my hard drugs, like just gone. And he's talking about how I was like talking about God and playing Christian music. And I'm like, I don't even remember it, to be honest, because I was just like out of there at the time. I have faint memories. But it was so cool to hear him say this back to me because I'm like, what? Like, and it was just, I don't know, it was cool that like, in the midst of it, I mean, I just knew bottom line, like I needed to get right with him. And so even though I was still gone on drugs, like I knew him, you know, and I was still going to tell people about that. Like it wasn't hiding it. So,
well, thank you. That was so good. Hearing your testimony. I hope if you are listening that this testimony encourages you like it just encouraged me. Whew. Thank you again, Jeff. I know that probably wasn't easy sharing the hard parts, but wow.
No, it's cool. I was like trying to tell myself I'm going to do this short because I tend to talk a lot when it comes to sharing it. I have no idea how long we're going, but
well,
I feel like I talked forever.
No, there's a lot to it. So thank you guys so much for listening. Leave a comment for Jeff and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Share this with your friends. And I just want to say, if you're listening and you're struggling in any way like Jeff did, be encouraged. Be encouraged by that testimony.
There's a way out. Reach out to someone too, like, because that was a big thing for me. I had such a hard time telling someone where I was at. I'm like, no one's going to understand. Like, I can't tell them. They're going to be mad. They're going to be so disappointed in me. They're not.
Yeah.
Like, tell a loved one where you're at because they love you and they care about you and they want to know where you're at so they can help you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway,
wow.
Tell someone.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, guys. And we will see you again next week. Bye.